My dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "We used your savings on someone who deserved it more." No pause, no flicker of doubt, just a blunt fact he expected me to swallow without choking. He actually thought I wouldn't question him. The air in the room tightened, the clatter of Noah's fork scraping his plate, my mom's awkward little throat clearing, the faint buzzing of the dining room light overhead. For a split second, I couldn't tell if the sound pounding in my ears was my heartbeat or the quiet collapsing around us. I finally managed, better than me? My voice barely rose above a whisper. That was when Grandpa pushed himself up from his chair, slow but steady, his expression turning into something carved out of stone, the kind of look that warned something was about to snap. Say who? Say it right now. But the deepest betrayal didn't start at that dinner table, and it definitely didn't end there. My name is Ava, and for most of my life, I honestly believed keeping quiet made things smoother. I grew up in a house where silence was treated like a currency. As long as you kept your head down, everything stayed calm. Speak up, and suddenly you were the problem. So I learned young how to shrink myself, how to fit into corners without taking up too much air. I became the child who packed her own lunch, who walked herself to school because no one remembered the time, who taught herself not to ask because asking meant disappointment. And the person all that space was saved for was my younger brother, Noah. Everyone said he had potential, like it was something he radiated, something the rest of us were supposed to bend our lives around. Mom and Dad poured everything into him, like he was some fragile miracle. Attention, praise, money, indulgence. By the time we were teenagers, the favoritism wasn't hidden anymore. It was a routine, a structure, and I was expected to understand why it made perfect sense. Birthdays were a lesson in inequality. Noah got bikes, game consoles, new sneakers fresh from the mall display. I got whatever sounded reasonable. You're the sensible one, sweetie. You don't need much. The cake tasted dry every single year. Same with award nights. I'd walk up for some small achievement, an attendance medal, a writing contest certificate, and Mom would clap like it was an obligation, while Dad muttered about how Noah's big moments were coming. I believed them. That was the worst part. When I turned 16, I got my first after-school job, filing papers at an insurance office, later doing weekend shifts at a small cafe. I saved everything. Tiny amounts at first, then slowly more. Eventually, it added up. Something real, something mine. Dad told me to give it to him so he could help me put it into a proper account. For my future, he said. I trusted him. I really thought families protected each other's efforts. By 23, I was working full-time as a junior admin downtown. That savings account was supposed to be my cushion, not for anything dramatic, just so I could breathe, maybe put a down payment on a used car one day. I moved into a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and a view of a cracked parking lot, but it was my own place. I filled it with thrift store frames, kept a plant I always forgot to water, learned the daily noise of the street. My life was simple, but steady. Still, every couple of weekends I drove home. I said it was to stay connected, but it was really for Grandpa. He'd show up during my visits more often than not, and he always made time to check on me without making it obvious. "You doing all right, kid, or are they pushing you too far?" He'd ask softly. I'd force a smile and tell him I was fine. I didn't realize then that he already sensed the truth, that something was off. The first warning sign came quietly. It was a rainy Wednesday after work, the kind of night where everything felt damp and tired. I reheated old pasta, sat on my couch, opened my laptop to check my account like I always did. The number on the screen made no sense. I blinked, refreshed the page, refreshed again. The balance wasn't low. It was nearly wiped clean. Completely wrong. For a moment, I sat frozen, my fork hovered in midair. That old habit crept in. Don't assume the worst yet. Don't panic until you're sure. But then I looked at the transaction history. Withdrawal after withdrawal, transfer after transfer, small amounts spread out over months, all carefully spaced, all hoping I wouldn't look too closely. Someone knew I rarely complained. The next day, I went to my parents' house pretending everything was normal. Mom was chopping vegetables, humming like she was in a commercial. Noah lounged on the couch with a brand new laptop shining in front of him. Sleek, expensive, the kind that costs more than my rent. Nice laptop, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't glance up. Yeah, Dad said I needed something good for school, for the new programs, gear, supplies. He said it's an investment. He kept clicking like the world owed him upgrades. Mom poured carrots into a pot. Ava, don't be difficult. He's at a crucial age. You remember how you were then? I worked after school, I murmured. She didn't even look at me. That was your choice, and you turned out fine. It wasn't what she said, it was how effortless it was for her to dismiss me. Later, while the house quieted down, Dad walked into the kitchen, rattled in a drawer, then shut it sharply. I watched him and forced the question out. Dad, what happened to my savings account? He didn't hesitate, didn't even pretend to think. We used it. My stomach dropped. Used it for what? For your brother. He needs opportunities. He needs things you didn't. I stared at him. I didn't need opportunities? He brushed that off. You're working, you're stable, you're fine. Noah needs more support. As if my responsibility, my effort, my entire adult life meant nothing. As if being independent made me less deserving. I don't remember what I said. Maybe nothing. Maybe silence was all I had left to keep from shattering. But later that night, when everyone was asleep, I remembered the drawer Dad had opened. Something whispered at me to check it. Tucked under old menus was a folder with my name printed across the front. Inside were papers, forms, preparations to open a small loan in my name, without my knowledge. My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from something sharper, a clarity I'd never felt before. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. The moment everything inside me changed. I barely slept. I lay awake in my apartment, listening to the heater click and hum, replaying every detail like a broken film reel. The empty account, Noah's shiny new laptop, Dad's steady voice admitting it like it was reasonable, the loan paperwork hidden in that drawer. By morning, I felt different. Not stronger exactly, but harder, focused. I moved through my day as if my brain was doing two things at once, working my job and building a plan beneath the surface. At lunch, I met my friend Lily at the cafe. She took one look at me. You look like you haven't breathed since yesterday. I told her everything, slowly, quietly, like turning pages I'd been scared to open. Her face twisted with anger. Ava, that isn't just wrong, that's a crime. I know. They think I'll stay quiet. Are they right? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She could see the answer in the way my hands shook. When work ended, I drove straight to Grandpa's house. He opened the door before I even finished knocking, his eyebrows pinching together the moment he saw my face. Sit down. Tell me. We sat in his living room, surrounded by old books and the smell of pine. I laid everything out, the missing money, Dad's excuses, the loan folder with my name. Grandpa listened with his jaw clenched tight, eyes burning with a fury he barely held back. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. I knew they favored Noah, but this is using you, Ava. They're relying on the fact that you won't fight. I won't let it go, I said. And you shouldn't, he replied. Not this time. We spent almost an hour going through every printout I had. He pointed out dates, patterns, inconsistencies. His hands were older, slower, but his mind was sharper than anyone else's in that house. You need proof, copies of everything. Keep them somewhere no one can touch. I already started, I said. He nodded like he'd been waiting for that answer. Before he left, he rested his hand on mine. A family that loves you doesn't drain you dry, Ava. They don't take from you and call it helping. You deserved better a long time ago. His words hit deeper than I expected, maybe because no one had ever said them outright. I drove home with the city lights blurring in the windshield, my thoughts sharper than they'd ever been. Once I got inside, I sat at my small kitchen table and laid everything out. The statements, the withdrawal records, the loan documents, every printed page. Then I gathered them all into a single organized stack, not to confront them yet, but because this time I wasn't planning to be silent, for the moment Dad would least expect. And I knew exactly when that moment would be. My parents liked to host family dinners whenever Grandpa visited. They said it made the house feel warm, but it always felt staged, like they were performing a version of family we didn't actually live in. When Grandpa called to say he'd be in town that weekend, Mom immediately planned one. She asked me to come early. I didn't. I arrived exactly on time, a folder tucked inside my bag, my heartbeat steady in a way it hadn't been in weeks. The moment I stepped into the living room, I knew something was off. Mom moved around too quickly, touching napkins, adjusting plates that didn't need adjusting. Noah was sulking in a corner, scrolling on his phone, like he was trying to disappear into it. Dad, calm as always, stood near the kitchen doorway, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Grandpa sat at the dining table, cane resting beside his chair, eyes sharper than ever. When he looked at me, something in my chest steadied. Dinner started normally, too normally. Small talk, clinking silverware, the smell of roasted chicken mixing with the faint citrus cleaner Mom always used. But the air felt stretched thin enough to tear. Dad cut into his food and glanced at me. "Heard work's keeping you busy." "Yeah," I said. "It's been steady," Mom added. "We're proud of how independent you are. Not everyone your age manages that." I almost laughed. The irony sat bitter on my tongue. Then Dad said it just like that. No pause, no warning. "We spent your savings on someone better." The room collapsed into silence, the kind that doesn't echo, just presses down. I felt Grandpa's gaze move from me to Dad, slow and heavy. Noah froze mid-chew. Mom set her fork down too fast, the metal clattering against her plate. I swallowed once. Better than me. Dad didn't blink. "Your brother needed support. You didn't. It's simple." Simple. A word like that should never be used to justify betrayal. I didn't look away. That money was mine. All of it. I worked for it. "You'll be fine," he said, brushing the air as if shooing away a fly. "You're responsible, strong. No one needs more guidance." Grandpa pushed back his chair, then an abrupt scraping sound that cut straight through the room. He stood slowly, but with a presence that filled every corner. "Name that someone," he said, voice low, steady. "Now." Dad opened his mouth, but whatever came out wasn't confidence. It was panic disguised as irritation. "Dad, this isn't your business. We handled things the way we saw fit." "That's clear," Grandpa said. "Too clear." His gaze flicked to me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. My hands didn't shake this time. Every page felt like an anchor, not a burden. "I brought something," I said. Dad's jaw tightened. "Ava?" I laid the papers on the table. Statements, withdrawals, payments, bills, dates, lined up like a confession. The last page, the loan paperwork, sat on top. Mom's breath caught. "Where did you get all that?" "It was in your drawer," I said calmly. "The one you thought I'd never check." Noah leaned forward, confusion spreading across his face. "Wait, this came from her account?" Dad snapped. "You needed those classes. Don't start acting ungrateful." "I didn't ask you to take her money," Noah shot back, the first real crack in his voice. "Why would you even—" "Because you deserved it," Dad said sharply. "Ava doesn't need expensive things. She doesn't need the same opportunities. She manages on her own. She always has." Grandpa slammed his palm on the table, not hard, but with enough force to silence every voice instantly. "That does not make her less deserving," he said. "It makes her exploited." Dad's face flushed. "Dad, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." Grandpa's voice was ice. "You took her savings without asking. You tried to open a loan under her name. You put her future at risk so you could keep pretending Noah is helpless." Mom whispered, "We were trying to support him." At her expense? Grandpa asked, turning his eyes back to me. Ava, speak plainly. What do you want to happen now? It was the first time anyone in that house had ever asked me that. I breathed in slowly. I want my savings returned, every dollar, and I want the loan paperwork destroyed by your hands, not mine. Dad shook his head. You're overreacting. You have a job. Grandpa cut in. She won't replace what you stole. You will. Dad's expression shifted. Anger first, then fear. Real, flickering fear. Mom's voice trembled. We don't have that kind of... Then you'll adjust, Grandpa said. Sell something, cut back, figure it out. Because if Ava files this as a financial abuse report, the consequences will be significant. A long silence followed, heavy, unavoidable. Finally, Noah spoke, voice quiet. Ava, I'm sorry. I didn't know. It didn't fix anything, but it mattered that he said it. Dad sank into his chair like the air had been punched out of him. Fine, he said through clenched teeth. We'll return it, all of it. And the loan? I asked. He swallowed. I'll shred it tonight. Grandpa nodded once, satisfied. Good, then this family might still have a chance. But I knew better. Some damage doesn't undo. It just becomes a line you never cross again. I stood, gathering my folder. I'm going home. No one tried to stop me. For the first time in my life, leaving didn't feel like running away. It felt like stepping into the life I finally chose. The next few weeks moved quietly, almost strangely so, like the aftermath of a long storm. My parents returned the money in small, tense installments, more than they ever thought they'd have to explain. Each transfer arrived with no message attached, no apology, no acknowledgement, just numbers moving from one account to another, undoing a betrayal they never should have committed. Grandpa checked in often. Sometimes he called, sometimes he'd drop by my apartment with groceries I didn't need, but accepted anyway. He never lectured me, never pushed. He just made sure I knew I wasn't walking through the wreckage alone. Noah kept his distance at first. Then one afternoon, he showed up at my door, hands shoved deep into his pockets. He didn't try to justify anything. He just said, I'm trying to do better. And for the first time, I believed him. Life in my apartment felt different now. Later, I organized my files, built a new budget, and took small steps toward the future I thought I'd lost. I wasn't scared anymore. What happened at that dinner didn't fix my family. It didn't erase years of silence, but it gave me something I never had before, a boundary they finally had to see. I still visit my parents sometimes, but things aren't the same, and maybe they're not supposed to be. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a line that reminds you where you end. For the first time in my life, they finally stopped crossing mine. I'm building a future on my own terms now, one they don't get to rewrite or borrow from. And if you've ever had to stand up to the people who were meant to protect you, I hope you know this. You're not wrong for wanting respect. You're not alone. If this story speaks to you, share your thoughts below and hit subscribe.